The best solution is and always has been to implement our tax jurisdiction. First Nation tax jurisdiction has existed and was practiced long before contact. As the Supreme Court stated in 1995, our tax jurisdiction is an inherently governmental power. For the past 20 years, First Nations have been successful in establishing property tax, sales tax jurisdiction across Canada. These revenues have improved community services and infrastructure. This jurisdiction has been established in a coordinated and an efficient way with the federal and provincial governments through legislation and with support of the Tax Commission. Extending our tax jurisdiction to resource projects could help remove much of the opposition and uncertainty about resource projects in British Columbia and elsewhere in Canada. It could provide necessary revenues to finally close the existing infrastructure, service, and economic gaps. We shouldn't be talking about sharing a tax that was developed by a provincial government over a limited range of projects. We should be talking about a transparent First Nation tax, an Aboriginal resource tax, and how both the federal and provincial governments should vacate some of their tax room so that we don't tax investment out of existence. And here is why. First, court decisions have moved us past fighting about title and rights into a new era of First Nation ownership and jurisdiction. Tax is the blood of government. This is how we begin to restore our place in the Federation. It is the place to start a new fiscal relationship with Canada. Second, royalty sharing doesn't work for many types of projects, such as pipelines. There is no relevant royalty, and most fiscal benefits may be enjoyed by the federal or provincial government. Third, revenue potential of royalties is determined by a provincial government, not us. So if they want to offer a royalty holiday and we're sharing revenues, we're not going to get a cent while that holiday is in effect. If they want to shift the incidence of taxation from royalties to corporate tax, First Nations will get less. Fourth, the process of negotiating financial agreements with resource companies is what I call pseudo-taxation. It is enormously inefficient and even destructive. It's time-consuming, creates uncertainty, and ultimately can kill deals and investment. This should be replaced with a transparent, pre-specified, and administratively efficient tax. Fifth, and this point needs to be raised by provincial governments as well. With royalty sharing, provincial governments give up some tax room to First Nations. But why should all the vacated tax room come from provincial governments? Provincial governments are the ones facing the biggest fiscal challenge over the next 30 years. First Nations are a federal responsibility, not provincial. Many resource and resource infrastructure projects span multiple provinces, so royalty sharing by one province doesn't work well. The federal government will be a big fiscal winner if we reduce the liabilities associated with First Nations infrastructure and First Nations poverty. The federal government is often the biggest beneficiary in terms of new revenues when a project goes forward. The question we should be asking is, how do we coordinate this tax? Here is a suggestion. We can take a giant step towards resolving the issue of First Nation support of resource development and the growing federal-provincial fiscal imbalance through one simple initiative. The federal government can create tax room for First Nations by offering a tax credit that would be based on taxes paid by industry to First Nations. Provincial governments could do the same. The Tax Commission could work with First Nations to create a tax that is fair, administratively simple, transparent, and offers low compliance costs. First Nations will no longer be the only government that doesn't get revenues when there is development on their lands. Accordingly, I am asking this committee, as part of its current study, recommend the federal government begin to explore how it can reconcile an Aboriginal resource tax in the Federation. It has been alluded to as a possible solution in stalled negotiations by the recent report by Doug Arford. Canada needs this investment. We need First Nations support for it to happen. We need to provide a First Nations fiscal benefit to get that support. and we need the federal government involved because provinces are apprehensive and revenue sharing is flawed. The federal government can offer up tax room, it can influence provinces, and the Tax Commission can help ensure that a new tax is successfully implemented so First Nations get much needed revenues to build their future and take their rightful place as partners in the economy and this federation. Thank you.